Hi, my name is Paul Sargent. Welcome once again to AP Euro Bit by Bit, the series in which I'm walking you through modern European history in small bite-sized pieces so you can better understand it. Today we're going to answer the question, who was John Calvin? Following this series, you've seen that Martin Luther started the Protestant Reformation, and in 1517, when he nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the church in Wittenberg, he started this movement which was an intellectual attack that became a political and a social attack and a religious attack on the Catholic Church. John Calvin represents what many historians call the second generation of Protestant reformers. And these Protestant reformers tried to further institutionalize the Protestant church and turn it into their own interpretations of the reality of salvation. If you recall, Martin Luther was all about salvation by faith alone. Now, John Calvin is the probably most important of the second generation of reformers. And so Calvinism spawns many different religions that are going to come off of Calvin's ideas and move forward. First, let's take a look at who Calvin was.
So Calvin actually came from France, and he developed his ideas as a lawyer. And as a lawyer, he looked at things through a very legal eye. And he had a transformation in which he believed that God spoke to him, and he became very committed to the idea of studying religion and salvation. Well, that didn't go over so well in France, and so he was forced to move to Switzerland, where he would make his real impact.
Now, it's not so much Calvin that makes the difference, it's Calvin's ideas. And when he writes his Institutes of the Christian Religion, he codifies the beliefs of the Protestant Reformed Church. And it's going to be open enough that people can modify those ideas in order to meet the needs of their own people. And it's going to spread quickly. So let's take a look at the ideas of Calvin.
So Calvin agreed with Martin Luther on a lot of what he said, especially his idea of salvation by faith alone. But one thing stands out about Calvinism, and that's the idea of predestination. In Calvin's view, an eternal and omnipotent God already knows and has already decided who will be saved and go to heaven. They were called the elect. And they would show those actions through doing certain things, including an open profession of faith, a decent and godly life, and then participating in the sacraments of baptism and communion. But doing those things didn't mean people were saved, because it was really kind of out of their hands. It was God's choice, who had already seen and decided these things.
Okay, so predestination is a pretty misunderstood concept in today's world, and I often find it difficult to teach to my students. So I'll say this, it's based on the idea that an all-knowing God has created and seen everything that will happen throughout the future to the end of time. It's based on the belief that the people who are saved, those that have been chosen, will show that they've been chosen through the way they choose to live their lives.
A whole lot more to predestination, and some people liken it to the tulip idea, which was put forth in the mid-20th century. I'm not going to get into that here. You can look that up. However, the question is, how do you know if you've been elected? How do you know if you're one of the saved? Well, you don't. And just because you act that way doesn't mean that you are. It's kind of confusing.
But Calvin in Geneva set up a system that was going to enforce some of these actions that the elect should have on everybody. And he was going to use punishment in order to stop people from acting unelected.
1536 to his death in 1564, Calvin basically ran Geneva in Switzerland. He created a church government that enforced moral discipline on the people, using public penance and excommunication as punishments for going against laws of the church. And those included drinking, dancing, partying, and so forth. So it was pretty strict to live there.
Now, these Calvinist beliefs are going to spread throughout Europe. The Huguenots in France are going to adopt them. John Knox up in Scotland is going to adopt them and form the Presbyterian Church. Different Reformed churches are going to pop up all over Northern and Western Europe. And the spread, the massive and quick spread of Calvinism is going to spark a number of conflicts that we're going to take a look at in future videos. But the one that really affects people in the United States, probably more than any other, was the English Calvinists, who began to call themselves Puritans because they wanted to purify the church of all of the trappings of Catholic ceremony. These Puritans sort of went all out on this thing. But before we can tell that story, we have to tell the story of how England went from being Catholic to being Anglican. And we'll get to that in the next video. So that's Calvinism for you, and that's John Calvin, probably the most influential of the Protestant reformers. So if you're finding these videos helpful, please click subscribe, please share, tell people about this channel, and then that way you can be notified whenever I post new videos, because I'm going to keep these things pumping out because I want you to do well on your exams. I want you to understand this stuff. Anyway, that's it for today. My name's Paul Sargent. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.